Welcome to The Explainer. Okay, let's be honest. Have you ever felt like you're spending hours and hours studying, but just nothing seems to stick? Well, today we're diving into the actual science of learning. We're going to uncover some evidence backed methods that can help you master pretty much any skill way more efficiently. It's not about studying longer, it's about studying smarter. And sometimes the stakes couldn't be higher. For a medical resident, remembering a procedure perfectly isn't just about passing a test, it can literally save a life. And this exact high pressure world became the setting for a really groundbreaking study on learning. So, let's get right into this fascinating study. Back in 2006, researchers took a group of surgical residents who were all learning a new complex procedure, and they split them into two groups. The whole goal? To find out what the most effective way to learn is when the stakes are quite literally life and death. Now, here's the kicker. Both groups got the exact same training materials. They spent the same total amount of time studying, but one of the groups made a single, super simple change to their approach, and it resulted in a dramatic improvement in their skill. So what was it? Well, hang on, we're gonna get there. To really uncover their secret, we've got to go a bit deeper. We need to understand the fundamental mechanics of how our brains actually build and store memories in the first place. The answer, it turns out, is hidden in the very architecture of our minds. So, how does our brain even handle new information? Well, it's not like just flipping a switch. Nope, it's actually a journey. A journey through three distinct stages that turn a fleeting thought into lasting knowledge. First, a new memory is encoded in a part of your brain called the hippocampus. You can think of it like a temporary inbox or a mental sticky note. Then, as you revisit that information, the connections between your brain cells fire over and over again, which strengthens and stabilizes the memory. Finally, and this is super cool, a lot of this happens while you sleep. That knowledge gets transferred over to the neocortex for long-term storage. That's where it gets filed away and connected to everything else you already know. And this is where it gets really exciting. Because once you understand that process, you can actively start working with your brain's natural process instead of fighting against it. There are three powerful science-backed techniques that line up perfectly with how our brains are designed to learn. The first key is a huge shift in mindset. It's about moving away from just passively reviewing information to a much more effective method called active recall. We've all been there, right? Rereading our notes, highlighting half the textbook. The problem is, that stuff creates a false sense of confidence, just because the information is sitting right there in front of you. Active recall, on the other hand, things like quizzes or flashcards, forces your brain to retrieve the information completely from scratch. That struggle, that active retrieval, that's what actually builds strong, durable memories. And here's a wild fact. Getting things wrong is incredibly useful for learning. There's this thing called the hypercorrection effect. When you are absolutely positive about an answer, but you're dead wrong, and then you get corrected, that feeling of surprise, and yeah, maybe a little embarrassment, makes you way more likely to remember the correct answer forever. Your brain basically flags that mistake so you don't repeat it. Okay, our second technique is all about timing. It's not just what you study, it's when you study. It's about harnessing the surprising power of forgetting. Yep, you heard me right. Just take a look at this study on learning Spanish vocabulary. You had one group that crammed all their study time into one long day. The other group studied for the exact same total amount of time, but they spaced their sessions a month apart. The difference in what they remembered long-term was, well, it was staggering. The results really speak for themselves. When they were tested 8 years later, the group that spaced out their learning performed a whopping 250% better. By allowing yourself to almost forget something, you force your brain to work harder to pull it back up. And that effort is what builds a much stronger, long-lasting memory. All right, our final key technique is a little bit counterintuitive. Instead of mastering one thing at a time, you should actually mix it all up. This is called interleaving. So instead of practicing one type of math problem over and over, you mix in a few different types. Instead of drilling just one piano scale, you practice several different ones. Now, I'll be honest, this feels harder in the moment, but that's kind of the point. It forces your brain to develop more flexible, adaptable knowledge because it constantly has to figure out which strategy to use. So we have our three core principles: active recall, spaced repetition, and interleaving. That's the what of effective learning. So now let's talk about the how. How can you build a practical study system that actually uses these powerful techniques? Well, the Pomodoro technique is a fantastic way to structure your time. It's simple. You work in these focused 25-minute sprints, and then you take a 5-minute break. You repeat that a few times. This structure helps you avoid burnout, and it makes it way easier to tackle big tasks by breaking them into these manageable chunks of deep, focused work. And you can boost all of these techniques with some good, steady hygiene. Research shows that actually handwriting notes helps you process information more deeply than typing. Having a dedicated study spot primes your brain to get into focus mode. And yeah, you should definitely put your phone away and maybe turn off any music that has a distracting rhythm. Which brings us all the way back to the beginning, back to our surgical residence, a life or death procedure, and that one small change that made all the difference in the world.
After everything we've just covered about how the brain really learns, what do you think it was? What was the single factor that separated the really successful group from the rest?
It was spaced repetition. The more successful group simply had their training sessions spread out over 4 weeks. The other group crammed the same amount of training into a single day. That was it. That was the only difference. Crazy, right? And that's really the key takeaway from all of this. Effective learning isn't about willpower or brute force. It's not about pulling all-nighters. It's about understanding the elegant, powerful way your brain is already designed to learn, and then using strategies that work with that design, not against it. And so that leaves us with one last question. Now that you have the blueprint for more effective learning, how are you going to apply it to learn the things that matter most to you?